there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Today we're continuing our examination of Book 7 and looking at Chapter 2, the next continuation. So let's look into it right away. But someone might be perplexed as to how a person, though he forms a correct conviction, right, opinion or belief, right, 8 is interesting. The word is supposition or supposition hypobonai, right? This opinion, the supposition. We make a supposition in this at hypobonai, a conviction, a correct conviction. In other words, we're deliberating about what we must do. We're deliberating about what must be done. In our deliberation of what must be done, we make the correct deliberation decision. And this is why the hypolambeon, right? This he translates conviction, right? But he lacks self-restraint. But it was how someone who makes the correct judgment on something, but lacks self-restraint, acrasia, right? Some then deny that a person who has scientific knowledge, episteme, can lack self-restraint. For it would be a terrible thing when science is present, as Socrates used to suppose, for someone else to overpower it and drag it as if it were a slave, right? This is that line. This is consider Pythagoras' point, right? So he's kind of bringing up Socrates. He's introducing the Socratic objection that the science cannot, it'd be absurd to have self-restraint. That science is present, it would be impossible for it to happen. For Socrates used to battle against this argument in its entirety on the grounds that no such thing as lack of self-restraint exists. Acrosia exists. Nobody acts contrary to what is best while supporting that he is so acting. He acts instead through ignorance. That's the Socratic. He's bringing here that it's not through self-restraint. That, in other words, people err only through ignorance. The Socratic position, Aristotle is basically criticizing Aristotle here to some degree. That Aristotle is suggesting that Socrates' position is that there's no accuracy in that sense. There's only ignorance in that sense. You don't know what is the right thing. You're not calculating correctly. Therefore, it's not correct conviction. You cannot have correct conviction, correct judgment, but then not do it. Now, for science, yes. See, but then again, that's a different thing. Remember, that's a different thing between, let's say, the level of science. Again, remember this, at the level of science, episteme, Aristotle would say the level of episteme is really about things like mathematical things, things of logic, things of this. This is not, it has to do with understanding and not doing. And because science is about understanding and particularly about the things that always are and don't change, and not the level of praxis or action that can be other than they are, right? Things that come into being and pass away, but rather the things of, it's also, that's one thing. The subject matter is completely different, but also what they're doing. And the thing that one is acting versus one is understanding. And that therefore this is different in this sense. Okay, that's would be one thing, right? This argument then is in the contention. Is in contention. In other words, this argument then is in contention with the phenomena that comes plainly to sight, and one must investigate if, in fact, that this experience occurs through ignorance. What the character? What is it through ignorance? What the character of ignorance is. So, what is the character of this ignorance? So therefore, the contention of this phenomena that comes plainly to sight of this idea here, that this lack of self-restraint must be ignorance. It's not self-restraint. It's really ignorance in a sense. Okay, so let's see what this. See if this, in fact, this experience we see of people knowing what is right but not doing it? Is this really a thing of ignorance? And what if, in fact, this experience occurs through ignorance? What is the character of this of ignorance? For it is manifest that before he bef- before he is in the grip of passions, a person who lacks self-restraint, akrasia, does not think, at least, that he ought to act as he then proceeds to act. In other words, he doesn't think. In other words, he doesn't think he should do this. The argument. This is that quote. The brackets are usually the editor's additions or editors and comments additions here. For the manuscript, it says, "For it is manifest that before he is in the grasp of passions, before the passions affect him, the one who lacks self-restraint does not think he should do this." In other words, he thinks he should do something else, and then he does either. In other words, he thinks he should do X, but the passion says him to do not X, or he should think that he should do not X, but the passion leads him to do X. Right. So this is what is said here, and there are some people who concede this is this in certain respects, but not in others. So therefore, some people who concede this, that this is true, is uncertain. They agree on the one hand that there is nothing superior to science, but they disagree on the other that nobody acts contrary to the opinions held of what is better. And it is for this reason they assert that the person lacking self restraint is overpowered by pleasures, because he possesses not science but opinion. Okay, so that's in other words, doxa. In other words, the problem here is in the realm of deliberation of actions of what is to be done. Since it's not done, it is not a fact. It is to be done. It is what is possible. In other words, the realm of science, things that are or not, is not the same of something that is not yet, but may that will be. Of becoming. The becoming. The ising or notting, something that is or is not. Unchanging and eternal. These things are the unchanging. Versus the thing that is not yet, but will be. Could be. The becoming. Or the ceasing to be. Right? This is the point that Aristotle is trying to say, is that, and therefore in this state there is an opinion. This is more of a belief or an opinion. Belief. We making a belief here about this. We making a kind of, if we're going to be kind of more scientific, we'll say this is the difference between a hypothesis versus knowing. That a hypothesis is kind of a belief about something, right? We have a hypothesis. We have an educated understanding of what we think will happen. Versus when it's tested and it outcomes when it has happened, we then validate that this has been tested by what it resulted, and therefore the result was, we know that it didn't happen or didn't happen. It's no longer a realm of belief. It's a realm of it. It is a realm of knowledge in that sense, or fact. We say you want to say this is the whole question of fact and knowledge, right? But belief, as and I think that is the way. I think maybe some people would argue this, that all knowledge starts with opinions, right? Classically, we start with an opinion about something, and then we move it. Now, we have to understand what happens here regarding deliberation, that it's tied to kind of belief, okay? That it's a kind of correct, in other words, this is what prudence is. Prudence is kind of looking at what is to be done, and then an understanding of what should be done and how to best accomplish it. And therefore, this is a kind of, until the outcome happens, it is something more like a kind of an opinion rather than an opinion or a doxa than a fact in that sense, right? The realm of, we can say maybe the realm of praxis is the realm of dogma, right? Dogma, sorry. Realm of the realm of praxis, or the realm of this becoming and coming to be and passing away, is the realm of doxa, belief, opinion. Now that is interesting. That is the cave. We always like to say in Plato's cave, the cave is the cave is understood in many ways as the realm of opinion, political. The city, Strauss and the Reading Nicomachean Republic argued that the cave, the metaphor of the cave was the city, right? The political world, the city, the world of. But is it the world? Is not? Is it not only the political world, but it's the world, the existing world. The difference between uh, 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 the the land above. This is the Platonic image. Is the world, the existing world, is the world of opinion. This doxa, the cave. That's interesting. This is a. I mean, what is being suggested here is Aristotle would argue that no, the realm of praxis, and the realm of the city, thus is in the realm that is stuck in the political world, and the human world is stuck in the realm of this decision making praxis, and that this praxis produces a problem that nobody acts on contrary to this position, right? They therefore they are overpowered by pleasures in that sense, and it, this is and it, because and it, this is not so much about things that we know, but rather things that we believe of what is right, what is best. In other words, we this is and therefore there's a lack of the fact that there's doubt here. There's doubt. Now, there's not certainty. There's no certainty. Now, yes, in many ways, sense, there's this weird thing. The person who lacks self-restraint, maybe this is the thing that it's that member prudential person knows to grasp the thing, and he knows that he should do it. The question is, why doesn't he do it? His passions, in other words, does the person with self-restraint has less doubt that this is the right action? That his certainty, that he has more faith in his discernment on these things, and the one who lacks self-restraint doubts his certainty that this is the right action, and that he lets questions of his pleasure and pain, his bodily pleasures and pain, and these bodily passions overcome his action and doesn't do it. So this is an interesting thing here, he says here, right? He's overcome by pleasures because he possesses not science but opinion. But if in fact it is opinion and not science at issue, a person's conviction that rests not is not as strong as a but on a mild one. Again, this is the point I'm trying to make. Okay, I'm hitting it. I hit the logic. And as in the case of people given to hesitation, there is sympathy for someone who does not stick by the convictions in the face of strong pleasures. So that's the whole point. There is a moment that all of a sudden that you're not sure about it. You don't. Your conviction is not strong, and you, in other words, it's not strong. It's not. Rest is not strong, but it's mild. It's weak. It's weaker. It's not as strong. My conviction is strong, not strong. And therefore, it's more respectable that this person whose conviction is not strong succumbs to passions, right? His passions, strong pleasures, who does not stick in face of strong pleasure, strong things. Yet for corruption, there is no sympathy, nor is there. Nor is there for anything else blameworthy. So, in other words, all of a sudden there's a moment, there's a choice that I choose it wrong. In other words, I'm not doing it, because of this. I'm just succumbing to play. It's, in other words, he's suggesting here that it's kind of the weakness of will here is, where it's not blame. In other words, where it's not blameworthy is when I'm not so sure about it. But if I am sure about it and then do it, this is more blameworthy. There's something wrong. This is corruption. So there's a moment of what? It's not. It's corruption when you know you're certain of it, but you don't follow. Whereas here, you're not so certain of it. This is in other words, you can feel sympathy for or forgiveness for, right? This is that time. This is, I think, he's translating in that light that I'm going to understand it a little bit. Understand it that if you're not sure about it, but if you're sure about it, your deliberation is certain, then you don't do it. That's corruption, or some other reason that instead of doing that, I have some other base or blameworthy. Nor is there for anything else blameworthy. There was the corruption of this, or I do it. That is, I something that I can get blamed for. That it's and a choice. I made a choice, or I've done something, knowing that this is what I should do, but I don't doing it. Not because I'm unsure about this and I just gave in, but I just didn't want to do it. Right? It is therefore prudent to it is therefore prudent that resists pleasure. Is it prudence that resists pleasure? For prudence is the very strong thing. This contention, however, is strange. So the argument is prudence that resists pleasure? Prudence is strong, but this contention is very strange. For the same person will be simultaneously prudent and lacking self-restraint, and not one person who would assert that it belongs to a prudent person, a prudent human being, a prudent person, okay, a prudent human being, to do voluntary things, to do voluntarily the basest things. In other words, it's not going to be, in other words, that they voluntarily do the basest things, the lack of restraint. It can't be the case. The prudent man would not do voluntarily the basest things. It does not, in other words, it's a strange contention for the same person who will be simultaneously prudent and lacking self-restraint, and not one person, and not one person would assert that it belongs to a prudent being to do voluntarily the basest thing. In addition to these points, it has been shown before that the prudent person is skilled in action, and he knows what to, when he's doing, he knows what to do. He does the right thing, at least. For he is someone concerned with the ultimate particulars and possesses the other virtues. So he knows what is he's functioning the ultimate particular things. He's concerned with the ultimate particular things, and he possesses the other virtue. So it's not. So prudence is not the issue here. He's saying it's strange to talk about prudence and this lack of self-restraint in that sense. For if a person is self-restrained, if a person is self-restrained in having strong and base desires, okay, this is a person. I have strong and base desires, but I don't do it. If a person is self-restrained in having strong and base desires, the sophisunos, the moderate person, will not be self-restrained or the self-restrained moderate. So therefore, this is interesting. That was okay. In other words, self-restraint means I will restrain from doing the bad things. Now, self-restraint in a negative sense is I know what the good thing is, and I will not do it because of the passions. Here is I know this is wrong, but because of the passions, I will do it. Right. Therefore, the moderate person is not. In other words, the opposite person is I know this is. I want to do it. I desire doing this bad thing. It's not. In other words, this is the question. This is the question where the person chooses the good. Right. The self-restrained person is the person who there's a disconnect between his decision to choose and what he chooses and his delivery of it, doing it, right? What happens when someone willfully chooses the bad thing? I want to do that, but then I don't do it. That's a failure to deliver it. And would this not be self-restraint that I don't, a lack of self-restraint? And this is why this is a weird thing. Is if a person is self-restrained and having having strong and base desires, the moderate person will not be self-restrained, or self-restraint the moderate. So if you have, in other words, if you have in other words, it's not about the moderate person isn't the person who has longings for bad longings and then doesn't do them. Rather, this is kind of self-restraint, not moderation. So moderation is thus this is therefore he's showing how this differs from moderation and how this differs from prudence. In other words, self-restraint is not merely making the right choice, or not making the right choice. It's about having a desire for something, choosing choosing to go after, thinking that it is right thing I should go for, but for some reason, on lack of it, is I'm unable to do it. Right? I choose this choice. I know this is what I want to do, and this is what I believe is the best thing I should do. But I would, but my reason tells me how to do it and how to get it. But then the passions prevent me from doing this. Okay, I choose to do it, but I'm unable to do it. I want to do it. I intend to do it, but I don't, and actually don't do it because my passion prevents me from doing it. Right? Well, okay, or something prevents me from doing it in that sense. That's the self-restraint person is the one who doesn't do what that calculation has done, or in the negative sense, right? In the positive sense that if this was good and I don't do it, that's lack of self-restraint, right? In other words, if the I maybe the question is whether what is being pursued is good or base, right? That's the problem, and remember the prudent person and the sophosunos, or the moderate person. The thing that is being sought after, the end that is being sought after, is a good end. It's beneficial. It is good, not something. It's noble. It is not ignoble. It is a beautiful, noble, and beautiful kalos, not base. Okay, it's not the opposite, right? This is the understanding here. For it does not belong to a moderate person to have either excessive or base desires. And yet the self-restrained person must have such desires. For if his desires are worthy, 10 note, good, in other words, this is perhaps good, cheristai. This is not agathos or noble. It's a different cheristai. Are worthy, worth doing, choice the worth. The characteristic that prevents him from following them will be base. So, in other words, if his desire, in other words, the self-restraint must have desires. They have desires. They're driven by desires, excessive or base desires. The moderate person should have neither excessive desires nor base desires, right? Yet the self-restrained person must have such desires. They have desires. If his desires are worthy, good or decent, the characteristic that prevents him from following them will be base, with the result that not all self-restraint will be of serious worth. Just this idea of worth, this idea of value that is going worth. That is, I think this is the conception of worth here. Translation, the charis, choice worthy of choice in that sense, maybe. Um, in other words, for his desires are, if his desires are choice, worthy, something that worth doing, the characters prevents him worth in the sense that they're good, that they're positive in that sense, not negative. The characters prevents him from doing that is base, and the result, with the result that not all self-restraint will be of serious worth. But if his desires are weak and not base, it is nothing august. In other words, if his desires are not, there's nothing august or high to resist them. And if they are base and weak, it is nothing great. It is nothing great to do so, not resisting them. In other words, if they are base and weak things, it is not. In other words, if the desires are weak and base, there is nothing august to resist them. And if they are base and weak, it is nothing great to do so. This again, that's repetitive in that sense. There seems to be a repetitive. So what is it? Is his desires, if they themselves are weak, it is nothing to do base and weak. In other words, if their desires are grace and they themselves are base and weak, there's nothing great to do so in that sense. Further, if self-restraint renders a person able to abide by every opinion, in other words, further, if self-restraint renders a person apt to abide by every opinion, in other words, I'm going to just every view, every opinion, every choice I make, any kind of thing this is idea that opinion here is my belief about what I should do or what is thing. It is based. In other words, if self-restraint means I am able to, anything I believe or choose, I can accomplish it, then this is base. For example, if it prompts someone to abide even a false opinion, in other words, I know that this opinion is false. I will, I will then do. This opinion is a false. It's a false opinion. Now, I don't maybe believe it's a false. I don't maybe through ignorance I don't do it, but maybe I find out. But then I'm able to achieve it. And if lack of self-restraint renders a person apt to depart from every opinion, some lack of self-restraint will be of serious worth, as in the example of Neoplatonus and in Sophocles' Pericles. For he is praiseworthy because he does not abide by what he is persuaded of by Odysseus, on account of his being pained at telling a lie. In other words, the Sophocles Pericles, especially at lines 54. In other words, he's not going to tell a lie. In other words, in other words, Odysseus has convinced, has persuaded Neoplatonius, Neoplatonius. I can never say these words. I can never pronounce them. In the play, the Sophocles play, the Philoctetes, he's persuaded because he does not abide by what he's persuaded by. Odysseus abide to tell a lie, to deceive, but he can't do it. He's been persuaded to do this, but his passions. In other words, this is a case of what? If lack of self-restraint renders a person to depart from every opinion, some lack of self-restraint will be serious. Why? The case is here. This is doing it. In other words, it's not noble to lie. This is the problem of Kant saying that it's always not. It's never good to lie. Right? The Nazi comes to your door and asks that if you're hiding Jews, and the Nazi comes to your house and asks you if you're hiding Jews. That's the most extreme example. But now here, lying is something wrong, but it's still lying is never. In that, this idea here is that he is pained by telling. In other words, he is pained by telling a lie. The Nepoton is Odysseus has told him to lie. Now, is the lie a right thing? Maybe it is. Maybe lying in that case. But I have, and therefore there is, for him telling the lie, Odysseus telling the lie, there is no acrasia here. It is also, the lie itself is a good, it is a good thing. So he delivers it. This is the choice. Now here, the problem is lying in the, the question is a person who tells lies good? No, this is not good. And therefore he's inclined, his character is good, and the pain is caused by him doing something that he thinks he's not comfortable of doing. And his weakness of will is his inability to, in other words, the pain of, I don't want to, I think this is wrong, and therefore I don't do it because I think it's wrong. Now, there is an error here. The error is that in this case, that may not have been a wrong. It may have been the right thing to do. And from Odysseus's perspective and judgment, it is the right thing to do. It is the right action. In other words, Odysseus's prudence would lead him to make that choice. But he is not necessarily convinced by that prudence. He's been persuaded, but it's not strong. He doesn't share the same strength, right? He's not strong. And it's not something that, okay, this is a case of, okay, weakness of will, but it's not after a base thing. It's the thing, reason, in other words, it doesn't lead to a base outcome. Well, maybe it, who knows, it may have a big problem, but the reason he did it was not out of a corruption, but out of a trying to do good, trying to be good. He is not convinced that the calculation of Odysseus's persuasion of him. He doesn't have the same confidence that this is the correct action, and therefore the pain he feels about doing bad things leads him to do this. Now he goes, so therefore this is what that example is. Further, the sophistic arguments of prompt, in other words, further, sophistic arguments prompt perplexity. In other words, the sophist brings up. For on account of the sophist's wish to refute their opponents by way of paradox, so that they may be terrifically clever when they succeed. In other words, using logic. They use logic, they use paradox. The sophists are wise people. The wise man uses the sophist with sophistic argument, a prompt perplexity. Why? Because they refute their opponents by ways of paradox, so that they may be terrifically clever when they succeed. The very syllogism, the syllogism that results becomes a perplexity. In other words, the very syllogism that results in their success becomes a perplexity. Why? For one's thinking is tied up in knots whenever, on account of being dissatisfied with the conclusions reached. In other words, again, it does not wish to stay put, but at the same time is unable to proceed because it is unable to refute the argument. So that's perplexity. This is the perplexity. This is I'm not satisfied. In other words, there's a point where I've made the hypothesis, something is a conclusion. In other words, the syllogism has been made, and the syllogism is valid. Okay, there's a validity of the syllogism. There's not an error here, but it doesn't seem right. I'm not persuaded. In other words, I'm unable to refute the claim. Because I'm not able to get past it because I'm dissatisfied with the conclusion reached. It does not wish to, and it does not wish to say put, because at the same time I'm unable to refute the argument. I'm unable to refute the claim. I'm not able to go on. In other words, I'm not going to accept it. I'm not convinced by it. I'm dissatisfied with it. But at the same time, I'm not able to refute it, and I'm not able to, this is the perplexity, right? So it results from a certain argument that foolishness, when accompanied by a lack of self-restraint, is a virtue. So foolishness. So therefore, this argument, the foolishness with a lack of self-restraint is a virtue. What? As a result of a certain argument, that foolishness, when accompanied by is a virtue. For in that case, a person, on account of his lack of self-restraint, does things contrary to what he supposes. So, in other words, a foolish person who makes bad judgments all the time, but lacks self-restraint, this is virtue. In other words, this is a virtue. No, this is a kind of sophistic argument, right? So, because on a person, he lacks self-restraint, does contrary things to what he supposes, and he supposes that things are actually. In other words, he supposes that things actually good are bad, and that he therefore ought to not to do them, with the result that he will do what is actually good and not bad. In other words, he makes the wrong judgment. In other words, he does the right thing. In other words, he thinks this should be done, but he doesn't. He makes an error. What he decides, what he chooses, what he thinks is right is really bad. But his passions then prevent him from doing what he wrongly thinks is good, but therefore produces the good thing that he failed to deliver the false good thing, but rather and the outcome is the good thing that he didn't choose, right? Because he didn't deliver it. So this is the weird. This is the point that the sophist argument makes. So with the result that he will do what is actually good and not bad. So therefore, but he doesn't intend to do it. It's accidental, right? That's intention. It's not the intention. He doesn't intentionally do the good. It's an unintentional good that happens. Further, he who, because he has been so persuaded, does and pursues pleasant things and chooses accordingly, might be held to be better than someone who acts not from calculation, but lack of self-restraint. So therefore, what is it? Further, this is another example, another problem. He, because he has been, further, he who, because he had been so persuaded about this, does not pursue pleasant things and chooses accordingly, might be held better than someone who acts not from calculation, but from lack of selfish. In other words, I'm not calculating properly. I bad calculation, but I don't produce bad things. I don't produce bad things, but I actually because of lack because I have a lack of self restraint, acrosia. I don't do what I thought I should do, that I foolishly decided. Right? That he says that now he's saying that a person on account of the lack of self restraint. No. This is that passage. I went back too far. So he's persuaded. In other words, someone has been persuaded. He who, because he's been persuaded, does and does and does and pursues pleasant things, and it chooses accordingly. In other words, he chooses rightly. He chooses the right thing. He's been persuaded. He's been persuaded. He's been persuaded that this is. He's been persuaded, not that he's foolish, but someone has used reasoning, rationale, has persuaded him, logos, and he's persuaded by it. He thinks it's right. He thinks it's correct. And what? And he's being so persuaded, does and pursues the pleasant things, and chooses accordingly. He ultimately chooses the pleasant things and accordingly. That this is better. That this person is better. That he's been persuaded. He's been governed by reason. He's been governed by persuasion to do something that is wrong. That is maybe the pleasant things of these things. And he doesn't lack self-restraint. He does it, right? Versus the one who does from foolishness. From in other words, he doesn't act from calculation, but through lack of self-restraint. So therefore, the person who has self-restraint, in other words, two people, neither of them have calculated themselves, but rather been persuaded by others. One does it. This one, the one who he chooses accordingly held to be better than someone who acts out from calculation but through self-restraint, but lack of self-restraint. So therefore, in other words, that this person who's been persuaded and does and pursues pleasant things and chooses accordingly. He chooses what the correct thing has been persuaded, but he acts of this. So it is and better than someone who not from calculus. Okay, this is the one who this is he's not. In other words, he does and pursues pleasant things and chooses accordingly. So this is interesting. So what is it choosing accordingly? It means what he's been persuaded to do. Yeah, that's persuading to do. And is the persuading to do the right thing? Is the right thing being done? It's not clear here, but this is better than that. The one who does not from no calculation is being done, so not even persuasion, but through lack of self-restraint, he accidentally stumbles on it. For the former person is easy to cure. This one is this you just have to cure them of the of the former person is easy to cure because he might be persuaded otherwise. In other words, he doesn't. In other words, he does the if he did it because he did the wrong thing because he was persuaded, you could just persuade him, and he's persuadable. You just have to persuade, get correct persuasion, and they do the right thing. Right? That is better than the other person. So the former person is easy to cure because he might be persuaded otherwise, while the person lacking in self-restraint is subject to the proverb in which we assert, when the water chokes, you when the water chokes, what should you drink? Right. This is a proverb. Is otherwise unknown. When water chokes you, what should you drink? Right. So this is the problem. This metaphor that when water chokes you, what should you drink? Right. A person lacking self-restraint is subject to the proverb. In other words, that you can't fix it, right? In other words, that he's going to always do the wrong thing in that sense. So the one who can be persuaded to do the right thing, even though he doesn't know what the right thing is better than the one who just simply just has no calculation, but lacks, in other words, just acts not because of calculation of what should be done, but through lack of self-restraint, right? For if he had been persuaded to act as he does, then upon being subsequently persuaded to stop, he would have done so. So the first one would have told to stop, he would have done so. Listen, plausible. But as it is, though he has been persuaded of one thing, he does, in other words, he's been persuaded of one thing, he does the other thing nonetheless. So that's the second one is he may be persuaded, has been persuaded. The one who's been persuaded does something else. In other words, he doesn't do what he's persuaded. So this one can be corrected, but this one cannot. Okay. Further, if self-restraint and its lack pertains to all things, who is the person lacking self-restraint in an unqualified sense? So does it pertain to all things? And then who is the person who lacks self-restraint in an unqualified sense? For nobody has nobody has all forms of the lack of self-restraint. But we do assert that some people are lacking self-restraint in an unqualified sense. So in other words, what is meant by lacking of this unqualified sense? Is it that nobody does it? Nobody could have all the forms of lack of self-restraint. But then we nevertheless, we do assert that some people are lacking self-restraint in the unqualified sense. So that's another perplexity in that sense, right? Such then are some of the perplexities that result. And of these, one ought to do away with some, but leave the others remaining. For the resolution of a perplexity is a discovery. In other words, of these perplexities, some of these we can solve, we can do away with. But some do away with, but some leave others remaining. Why? Because why? Because for resolution of a perplexity is a discovery. Again, that's the whole point. That this is one thing of science, right? We have a perplexity, we resolve it. That's a discovery. We make something new. A discovery is discover something new, something more. So let us stop here on this thing, these perplexities, these lists of perplexities, and what is to be done. So we'll stop here, and when we look next chapter, next time we'll look at chapter 3, and what he says there. Now, let's. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below, and when I see them, I will answer them. If you've liked it, hit the like button. Please hit the like button. I hope I didn't. I'm thinking that I remember that thing in the last video. Oof. If you hit the like button, please hit the like button. Share it with friends far and wide. Share the video on social media or with other people. Please, again, share it far and wide. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Encourage others to come to the site. Welcome others to come here to the site and look at what we do. If not, convince them to hopefully they subscribe as well, so we can grow the channel. If you didn't like what I did and you think I did something wrong, like I forgot something, please, you can always say no, but say what in the comments. Set what in the comments, and that way we can correct. People can make there's some benefit. People can get benefit from that. You can want to follow me on social media. The social media links are listed below. If you want to know more about my scholarship and me as a scholar and as a researcher and as a teacher, you want to see my scholarship and check it out, you can go do so through the social media, academic social media links below. The social media links. And then next, if you want to help me to do what I do, financially in that sense, and contribute in that sense, to help me accomplish these things and pay subsidize things, this takes time and energy. Please, you can do so through the links to Patreon or Subscribestar. Or if you want to just buy it, you can go. I list below my books. You can go buy a book. I list my 3 available books that go there. You can do so through your local bookstore, bookseller, or whatever. They'll help. They have them order it if they don't have a copy themselves. Right? Maybe they won't have a copy, but they can order it. Or you can order it through an online bookseller like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Libris, or whatever the one that you want to use, or you can go to the bookstore, go to the publishers directly. Now, the one that I will get them, if those of you studying the politics and wishing to have a study guide, the notebook for Aristotle's politics, going to Lulu would be probably the best option, because Lulu is the only publisher that gives me the more direct money, but also gives me the money the publisher. If you buy it through Lulu, I'll get the money that the bookstore you buy it from will get. So we'll buy it from the online bookstore, particularly Amazon, places like that. Okay. So therefore, that's it. We turn next to chapter 3, which will kind of maybe resolve some of these. We first here we've done the perplexities, and now he will start maybe addressing them in the next chapters. Okay. Well, therefore, that's it. We'll stop here. Take care and have a good day. Bye bye. See you next time.